In my memo tonight, I'm asking for clarity. I think Kenyans deserve some education about the education sector. As the country transitions from the 844 system to the competency-based curriculum, or CBC. In the past few days, there has been confusion about several issues, including whether grade 3 children will sit for exams or assessments, or whether their birth certificates will be required for registration or not, and the list goes on. But tonight, I'll focus on the confusion surrounding the implementation of this new curriculum, whose intentions seem noble, but whose rollout has so far been a huge mess, marred with uncertainty. The rollout began under Minister Fred Matiang'i, then its implementation taken over by Amina Mohamed. And now George Magoha is the man in charge. But throughout that 2-year period, the government is yet to decide on some crucial elements of the program. For instance, education officials were 2 days ago unable to explain whether a national examination will be administered to all grade 6 pupils before they transit to junior secondary schools under the new curriculum. Now, a task force has been set up to advise on that important question, amongst others. But critics have questioned why this is being decided now, when the first CBC lot is only 3 years away from grade 6. Then there's the grade 3 national assessment, which is due to be conducted countrywide. It remains unclear what exactly these assessments are and how they'll be conducted. Registration for this assessment began this week and will continue until August. Amazingly, some school administrators have admitted to having no information about this exercise. The ministry says pupils will not be ranked after the assessment. The question is, what criteria will be used to decide whether a child is ready to proceed to the next grade or not, or will that no longer matter? We have no idea. There's no small matter. This is about the future of millions of children in the country. The government has to take charge and carry the parents along. As a decision maker, the ministry needs to lock itself up with all the information it has and come out with solid decisions. Because so far what we have seen is a minister who seems to be thinking aloud rather publicly. And that's my memo.
Tonight on my kicker, I'll talk about that often unspoken trinity: death, dignity, and politics. If he watched his memorial service earlier today, Bob Collymore, wherever he is right now, must be asking himself, did that just happen on Kenyan soil? And this, I would say, is a perfectly legitimate question about what was the funeral, or is it memorial service, of Bob Collymore that took place at the All Saints Cathedral here in Nairobi. This was indeed a memorial service with a difference. First, it was wholly and comprehensively about the one and only subject matter, the late Bob Collymore, and him alone. Secondly, it was overflowing with dignity. And by this, I don't mean the dignitaries that attended the funeral service. I mean the dignity of the dead, the dignity of the late Bob Collymore. For typical Kenyan politicians, things must have appeared upside down today. To many politicians, this was definitely a tough funeral service to attend. At the All Saints Cathedral, death and dignity were the only items on the program. No politics. In a funeral, in Kenya, no politics. That must have felt odd for politicians. They sat quietly on the regular pews of the cathedral. No high table, no special tent, normal church seats, and listened to a story of enviable accomplishments of Bob Collymore. They were told about the great deeds of a man they all agreed achieved a lot in his short 10 years of life in Kenya. They were told about a loving family man, a caring friend, a nurturing mentor, and a transformative corporate leader who dreamt and worked for a better Kenya. They listened keenly and quietly to glowing but disciplined tributes delivered in strict honor to the dead, the truth of their life story, and their dignity. Even light moments were told about the life and times of Bob Collymore. No digression, except for that little whiskey bottle ownership dispute, which still fitted perfectly with Bob's witty personality. But overall, no sideshows, and above all, no politics. Yet, this is the very dignity Kenyan politicians have been stripping the dead off in funerals across the country. They would normally arrive late and noisily, proceed to the tent where the coffin is placed, and bow to it, I suppose in appreciation of the great crowd it has brought together. They then proceed to the tent designated for dignitaries, from where they become the main show. They would then take to the podium to ostensibly give their tribute, a quick passing reference to the deceased, and some are often not sure who exactly is dead in the first place. This is normally followed by an unsolicited and obviously unbinding declaration to extend some form of help to the bereaved family. With those inconveniences out of the way, the politicians would normally break into lengthy political rants that includes attacks against perceived enemies and prophecies about their future that includes winning the 2022 elections or endorsing their favorite presidential candidate. After the speeches, they would routinely excuse themselves and hurriedly exit the village. And to put it biblically, let the dead bury their dead, whatever Jesus meant by that. To these politicians, death and funerals provide a platform for politics. This is the opportunity they missed at the memorial service of Bob Collymore. With so much political content in the air, this must have felt painful for the politicians. Imagine no room for Tangatanga versus Kieleweke, or new leads to the Lamada plot. Not even a minute for the National Assembly and the Senate to show us who is superior. Come on, how about some juicy conspiracies, like the DCI is set to defect from Kieleweke to join Tangatanga this weekend? No politics? Bob Collymore must be smiling. Rest in peace, gentle Bob. That's my kicker.
Well, I'm sure by now you are up to date on the events in Molo constituency today. The area lawmaker Kimani Kuria attended a public meeting called to discuss the illicit brews menace. But guess what? He appeared drunk, unruly, disorderly, and I dare say dishonorable in every sense of the word. The men and women in attendance shocked with their MP's behavior, forcing him to exit, even expressing shock and outrage. But you know what? I'm not shocked that the lawmaker behaved this way. When you are drunk with power and impunity, nothing matters. Even attending an anti-illicit alcohol meeting drunk. You see, in 2010, Kenyans overwhelmingly voted for a new constitution. One of the most important chapters was number 6 on leadership and integrity, a chapter that was seen as a solution to the malady of impunity and responsive leadership, misbehavior, and total disregard for decorum and order, especially for those occupying public offices. But what happened? When the Leadership and Integrity Bill was brought to Parliament, members mutilated it thoroughly, expunged very progressive proposals, and left us with a shell. With that parliamentary conspiracy, many public office holders can get away with nearly any misconduct. Yet, the Constitution requires public office holders to bring honor to the offices they hold. Did the Molo Member of Parliament bring honor to the office of a lawmaker and the institution of Parliament? Certainly not. If Kimani Kuria was a member of the August House in any of the developed democracies, his dishonorable behavior today would have been a sure exit ticket. But guess what? He will remain a member of the Kenyan Parliament. And these, ladies and gentlemen, is the best definition of mtadu. That's my punchline.
On my take tonight, I pay tribute. Tribute to the heroes of this country, the living and those who have moved on to the next realm. 3 days from today, the country will live through a significant day that is likely to pass almost unnoticed. Saba Saba, that glorious day in the country's struggle for democratic change. 29 years ago, pro-reform activists took the battle to a rigid KANU regime, with the late Kenneth Matiba and Charles Rubia calling a press conference to demand the reintroduction of a multi-party system of politics. In fact, on this very day, 29 years ago, both Rubia and Matiba, together with Raila Odinga, were arrested and detained without trial. But it was downhill from here on for the KANU government as Sabasaba became an annual day of national defiance. Pro-reform forces made July 7, 1990, a day of the Sabasaba multi-party rally. But against bloody confrontations with a murderous regime force, people died. Innocent people were killed. Others were maimed. But the struggle bore fruit in 1991, when President Moi, a politician of great survival instincts, sensed the end and changed tack. Moi initiated the repeal of Section 2A and allowed the country to return not just to competitive multi-party politics, but also basic freedoms, such as freedom of speech and freedom of expression, among other liberties. So tonight, we owe it to those who fought for those freedoms and liberties. They are the men and women that enabled you and I to speak freely on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, to speak directly to your leaders, from the president all the way to MCAs and to each other. The brave Kenyans who gave you the freedom to debate, discuss, interrogate, critique everyone, including us here in the media. My tribute tonight goes to those involved in the second liberation struggle and beyond for this country. First, the academia of the 70s and 80s that made the University of Nairobi a living nightmare for proponents of dictatorship and bad governance. They include Professor Edward Oyugi, Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o, Professor Ali Mazrui, Mukaru Ng'ang'a, among others. Then the political liberation A-list that includes Mzee Oginga Odinga, Kenneth Matiba, Charles Rubia, Raila Odinga, Njeru Kathangu, George Anyona, Gitobu Imanyara, Masinde Muliro, Paul Mwite, Martin Shikuku, James Orengo, and Wangari Maathai, among others. The courageous clergymen such as Reverend Timothy Njoya, Father Ndikaru wa Teresia, Father Augustine Kimutai, Bishops Henry Okulu, Alexander Muge, Zacchaeus Okoth, David Gitari, and Ndingi Mwana Anzeki, and a host of many men and women who played direct or indirect roles and paid a heavy price in opening up the political space that we now enjoy. I will also not forget the tens of demonstrators who were felled by police bullets, a majority of them young and poor, and to the political elite, nameless. To you all, I say thank you. May we never forget your sacrifice, your courage, and your selflessness. As we remember Sabasaba this year, it is because of you all that we are. And that is my take tonight.
Now, on my angle tonight, I will also pay a tribute. But mine is to a man who would today be 89 years old had he lived. 89 years will be younger than two leaders of his generation who are still alive today, Daniel Arap Moi and Charles Njonjo. I'm talking about Tom Joseph Odhiambo Mboya, the illustrious son of Kenya whose vibrant life was cut short by an assassin's bullet exactly 50 years ago tomorrow. On the 5th of July 1969, just 6 years after Kenya's independence, under the glare of the afternoon sun, a hired gunman shot dead the 39-year-old minister at the time outside a shop along what was then called Government Road, now Moi Avenue. Mboya was by many accounts a humble leader with abilities that stretched beyond academic papers. He was a strategic thinker, an excellent organizer, a witty orator, and a consummate Pan-Africanist. Mboya, according to those who knew him well, hated mediocrity. TJ, as he was fondly known, was the personification of human determination. He rose from humble beginnings to leave indelible marks in the annals of Kenya's history. The son of a sisal plantation worker, Mboya defied the odds, including dropping out of school for lack of school fees, and went on to become a formidable force in Kenya and indefatigable voice of Pan-Africanism, rubbing shoulders with African greats such as Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana. He won the admiration of the powerful Kennedy family in the US, giving rise to the famous educational airlift to the US, of which many Kenyan youth became beneficiaries. And to date, many believe that had Mboya lived, the trajectory of Kenya would have been a very different picture indeed. The current governor of Kisumu County, Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, for instance, in his book, A Leap into the Future, says of Mboya's death, and I quote, "It is quite possible that Kenya would have followed in the footsteps of Singapore had the bullet not been fired at 1 o'clock on Government Road that day." End of quote. Tonight, on the eve of the commemoration of that dark Saturday afternoon, the picture couldn't be more different. The alleged assassin, a certain Nahashon Njoroge, was found and was supposedly hanged. But to date, the reason behind the murder and the real masterminds remain a mystery. And there is nothing to show that the era of political assassinations is behind us. Education that was held so dearly by Tom Mboya is today at crossroads, with many parents unsure what the future holds for their children and many graduates unable to make a decent living. The economy today is in near paralysis, with runaway debt and corruption dimming prospects of a prosperous future for all that Mboya envisioned. Tribalism that Mboya beat successfully by launching a political career away from his native home continues to scar the surface of the land, and the quality of political discourse that Mboya embodied is a rare commodity indeed. Today, our parliamentarians can spend 15 minutes of national time discussing a handbag of a fellow MP, and the two houses of parliament engage in juvenile supremacy contests as the nation watches in bewilderment. Mboya was, of course, not a saint, but friend and foe will admit he was a rare breed indeed. And if we ever owe him anything, it surely must be the need to get back to the basics of nationhood, a vigorous love for country, and a willingness to serve it selflessly. And that is my angle tonight.
Samanga fire.
TJ.
Indeed.
An amazing figure.
He'd be 89 tomorrow.
On August 15th.
On August 15th, yeah, because tomorrow was the day that he was murdered 50 years ago.
Yes.
There was something we were discussing in the newsroom. Mashirima Kapombe said this, and I hope she'll allow me to quote her. She said, just on the lines of your kicker, had Bob Collymore been a poor man, those politicians would not have respected him. Is that the same thing they do when they go to the village? Not necessarily a poor man, but a simple man.
True.
Food for thought.
That's it. Thank you, Eva.
Interesting. Anyway,
yeah.
Enjoy your night. We now hereby
launch the end
of the News Gang. See you on Thursday. God bless you.